name is Stephanie Gailing. She's an astrologer and a wellness coach, and we have a really fun chat happening today. So I am so excited to have her with us. And we are now live on Instagram as well. Here she comes. Hello, hello, my friend.
Hi there.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Nice to see you.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so nice to see you. I'm so excited for our talk today.
me
Um,
too.
I know. So, for those of you who don't know Stephanie, her name is Stephanie Gailing. She's an astrologer and a wellness expert, and also an author of 7 books. Well, I didn't realize it was so many books. So, I am so excited to have her here. We're going to talk about the 4 elements, what it is, and how you can apply it in your life. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ann Chikahisa, and I am a jeweler. My business is Chikahisa Studio. And we are doing this talk because I created a line of jewelry called the 4 elements. They're pendants as well as rings. And I've gotten some questions about how to use it and what do the 4 elements mean. So before we get started, I just wanted to, have Stephanie give her own intro and she could tell you a little bit more about her. And then she also wrote this beautiful download about the 4 elements, and I'm going to post it here on Channelize. So for those of you who are on my website, you can download it. And if you want it as well, I will put it. I will put it in the chat on Instagram for any of those of you that are in Instagram and would like to download it as well. So anyways, with that, I'll let you begin, Stephanie, and give your little intro.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you.
I know.
I love the work that you do, and I love, the collaboration that we had done a couple of years ago. And just when you told me that you were creating this new line focused on the 4 elements, I was just really thrilled. So a little bit about me. I'm an astrologer and a wellness consultant. I work individually with clients, with, colleagues, with organizations, using astrology as well as family constellations to help people optimize their well-being. And as you noted, I've written 7 books over the course of about a decade. Most are focused on astrology and weaving them in with wellness and self-care. And then I also wrote a book called The Complete Book of Dreams that is about connecting to your dreams as well as helping to create a better relationship with your sleep. 2 things that I
Yeah,
think are essential for well-being and a
yeah.
well-lived life.
And for any of you who want to get a copy of the Book of Dreams, I do have it on my website. So, and Stephanie also has. Are your books on your website too?
No, there's links to them to
Oh, okay.
Bookshelf, but you can get them that way as well.
Yeah, and her website is Stephanie Gailing, GAILING.com. So you can always check her out. So she is. We met through at an event, a women's event a couple of years ago, and I was so intrigued by you, and we just became friends. And your knowledge about astrology and how to integrate it in your life has just been so powerful because I've done a couple readings with you, and they've just been so meaningful. So thank you for taking the time to be here and to share your expertise with my audience. I
My
think they're going to love it.
pleasure.
Love it. So, anyways, um, let's, I guess, let's just start with what are the 4 elements and what do they mean for somebody who doesn't know that much about astrology or even what we're talking about?
Yes, right. For like a lot of like philosophical or cosmological orientations to the world and life and explaining it would come from an elemental perspective. And even say in Chinese medicine, right, they're working on that level with the 5 elements, but the 4 elements, fire, earth, air, and water, are woven into many philosophies and many cosmologies, including the art and science of astrology. And so we, as many know, right, there are 12 signs. and Aries, Taurus, Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. And there are 4 elements. So there are 3 fire signs, 3 earth signs, 3 air signs, and 3 water signs. And each of them has a different quality that connects them. So for example, the fire signs are Aries and Leo and Sagittarius. And while each of those are very different in terms of their qualities, they are bound by some similar characteristics. So it's really interesting to look at whether you're just looking at your sun sign, right, which is what you say when someone says, what's your sign? Or
Right.
now a lot of people know beyond that. The next level would be like, what are your big 3, which is your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. Or many people now are looking at their whole charts, and you can actually see the way that your signs are arranged in terms of the elemental balance. So it gives you another access point to being able to understand your constitution, your temperament, your proclivities, and how you orient.
That's so interesting. I know because, like, as I've learned from you, originally I just always followed what my sun sign is,
Mhm.
but the 3 are really, really important. So, can you explain a little bit more about what the 3 are?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the sun is, again, that's the one that's the most accessible to people, right? Because all you need to know is your birthday, right? So you can know like what your sun sign is. And the sun represents like our vital essence, right? That sense of our vitality and, how we are and what has us feel a sense of shine and luminosity, right? Like how we portray and we radiate that deepest essence of ourselves. The moon sign, like where was the moon when you were born? The moon represents what nourishes us, what feeds us, how we tend to things. Like the moon is a maternal archetype. So how we mother, whether we have children or how we tend to nurture others and ourselves. And also sort of that sense of our instinct and our emotional orientation. So
Oh.
that's the moon.
Hmm.
The rising sign, and oftentimes, like if you either have an astrology app or you meet with an astrologer, not only are they asking your birthday and the year, but the place and the time. And the time is especially important to be able to calculate your rising sign, again, also known as the ascendant, which signifies how you orient to life, right? Like how you carry yourself, which is why the ascendant also can give you some insights into qualities of your physical structure, your physical health. But it's also that sense like, we all move around in the world and we're not necessarily going to, expose or share the depths of ourselves to the people that we meet for 5 minutes here and there. So we have this sort of carriage, right? Our personality, if you will, like, how you would describe someone on meeting them for the first 5 minutes. And that's the ascendant, or again, known as the rising sign.
Oh, thank you for that great explanation. And so, like, if somebody was new to astrology, how would you use the 4 elements?
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing to do I'm going to speak of like 2 ways, right? Actually, I'm going to speak of 3 ways.
Okay.
2 of them being about your own personal chart, right? Like you can, go on one of the apps, whether it's people might have CoStar or Chani, or you can go on the internet to find your astrology chart if you don't know it. And on the website for the podcast I do called So Divine, it's sodivine.us. You can calculate your chart for free. And in that handout that people can access through your website and through the Instagram link that you had included, you can see, okay, if I'm a Leo, that's a fire sign. You can like check to see based on your signs what elements they are. So what I would first suggest is looking for the element of your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, right? And then you can start to see, like, for example, I'm a Pisces with a Taurus moon and a Gemini rising. So I have a water, an earth, and an air, right? So then also seeing how I orient differently on that level. Some people have much more of a concentration of elements. So let's say, whether you're looking at the three or you look at for all the planets in your chart, let's say that you have a lot of water. You're very weighted towards water. Then it gives you that sense of, wait, emotions are really important, right? Because the water element is emotions and receptivity and fluidity. Water is very porous and very permeable. So very watery people are very sensitive. So again, knowing that, you have a whole other element, to, no pun intended, to understand yourself. So you can see in terms of like, oh, I have a lot of this one element. So this tells me more about myself, and it can be both an affirmation of who you are and also to like, accept that and to nourish that part of yourself. Alternatively, some people see that they hardly have any of an element. So for example, I have no fire in my chart. And so I know that, so therefore, like, fire is not something that intrinsically in that element is natural to me. And so it's very important for me to bring that element in. So I really focus on bringing in some red, color, or lighting candles, having a relationship with the element that I don't necessarily have too much of. I want to also talk about how we can use the elements just in generally through the year, but is there anything you wanted to say about that or ask about that?
No, I think that's really fascinating. So, like when you talk about you don't have any fire in it and you try to bring it in, so is that to try to balance out the four elements within your specific astrological
Exactly.
landscape?
Exactly. So, because intrinsically through reading my astrology chart, that is not present. So I'm bringing that in. So, instead of like like in my environment. And it's interesting because I remember when you were first telling me about, the jewelry that you were doing, like for me, I'm thinking like, ooh, I should get like either a fire talisman or a fire ring, right? Like as another way to embody and embrace that element that for me is very low, is missing.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you. And so you were gonna say something before I interrupted you about um, how else you were gonna use it as a whole. Oh, throughout the year, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can even very easily look at like, what part of the year are we in? So for example, right now we're in Cancer season, which means like the people who are Cancers, are in their birthday month. But for all of us, whether we're a Cancer or we're not a Cancer, this is a month, beginning on June 20th till I think it's July 21st of this year, where we're really in that sense of that Cancerian energy, and Cancer is a water sign, right? So all of us have more of an opportunity and an outlet and a connection to that watery energy, to really look to see like, how can I up level my sensitivity, my nourishment, even with water being porous and permeable and intuitive, is this a time of the year where I may want to like work on those perceptive, intuitive skills? Listen to more music, connect to art. And then, for example, after Cancer is Leo, right? So Leo season is July 21st, I think, till August 22nd of this year. Leo is a fire sign. So all of us, right? So it's like that invitation to that element where we can then orient and invite that in, right? Invite in more inspiration, more activity, more passion, more sort of that sense of action orientation, because again, that is like the real sort of like base layer of that month that we're, all being, it's like a meet and greet, if you will, with that elemental quality.
Oh, that's so beautiful because I never really thought about how that ties into the four element for the season or the month of that sign and how powerful that could be, especially for, I'm just using you as an example of not having fire and then next month you're really consciously thinking about how do I bring that energy in to maybe experience life with a little different outlook than you would have without more fire in your life, right?
Ex-
So,
Exactly. Another way that I love to bring that in too, especially during the year, is I've been working a lot with altars, like doing small different altars. And so, say during this month now, to bring in a water element to the altar, whether it's something like something blue or literally like a little bowl of water, a little phrase from a poem, like all different or different emblems or icons that embrace that element. So again, you're bringing it into your awareness so that you can bring it into your experience and be able to both embody it as well as like embrace it and sort of see like how does that enhance your life during different times of the year.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So I have only done altars periodically. Is that something you do like every month? And how do you figure out what to put on your altar?
Yeah. So
Or
the
is it a
way
personal thing?
No, I mean, it's both, right? I mean, it's definitely like it can be, I mean, it's not personal. I mean, I can talk about it if that's what you meant. Like, I can
Yeah.
definitely share. There's many different ways of doing altars. Some like I've been working with a lot of like focusing on like ancestral healing, right? So I've been doing some altars like, in terms of honoring and revering ancestors, especially when I'm maybe working through a new intention and a new block and really looking for, support from looking in terms how that sort of system works in terms of support. But the way I've been also working with it on an elemental basis recently and with astrology is for each of the new moons, I will think about, right? Because a lot of people do new moon intentions,
Right.
right? It's a new moon. It's like, the Gemini moon, the Cancer new moon, the Leo new moon, what have you. And people feel like, okay, what do I want to bring to life? What do I want to seed during this month? And, for many people, it's just like whatever sort of they're feeling like is being birthed inside of them, right? This desire for something new. And you can work to be informed, if you like, in doing new moon intentions by the sign of the new moon, right? So, for example, we have, I believe it's on July 5th, the Cancer new moon. So,
Right.
okay, well, what do I want to bring to life? Okay, I want to bring to life something also that may have to do with my emotions or my sort of sense of home, my sense of, again, like perception, because it's the water. And so I will do an altar to help anchor that. And then in weaving in that, in addition to different things that I may bring in that represent my intention, can bring in I can bring in a representative of that element as well. And the altar is so beautiful because I mean, for many reasons, just the intentionality of creating the altar and, really focusing on bringing something into form. And then it's there, let's say like the new moon altar, it's there all the month. And so you like walk by it and you remember in that ritual way, like, oh yes, that is what I'm anchoring. That is what I'm setting my mind, soul, and heart to in terms of what I want to manifest and bring into the world.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. When I did it, I really loved it because it is intentional and it does remind you what you are wanting to bring in. But the other thing I loved about it is it's so pretty and you can make it so beautiful. It becomes a little piece of art in your house. And then when you walk by and you pause and look at it because it's so beautiful, then you're like, oh yeah, that's why I created it. So
Yes.
you're inspiring me to do it some more because it was really powerful when I did do it. Just haven't done it in a while. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so the new moon is July 5th. Is that what you said?
Yeah. The Cancer new moon is July 5th.
Okay. So now maybe some other people will want to join me and start doing a altar and maybe put something up for July 5th.
Yeah. And also too, like on my website under resources, I do have a page that notes the date of all the full moons and the new moons and the
Oh,
sign that they're in. So that's another way that you can track. Okay, there's the Cancer new moon, then in August there's the Leo new moon, then there's the
oh,
Virgo
that's
moon, etc., as a way for people to like orient and not just, because a lot of people are like know what the new moon is, but then to understand the sign that it's in and then
oh,
bring
that's
in their intentions for that, bring in the elemental quality for that.
Oh, that's so fantastic. That's so fantastic. So, for any of you that are watching and you have a question for Stephanie Gailing, who is an astrologer and a wellness healer, if you want to just put in the comments a question, she would love to answer anything that you may have, whether it's about astrology or maybe something that she wrote. She's written 7 books, or a comment you may want to put it in the comments. We'd love to hear. Um, so going on to astrology and what's happening right now in the landscape, the astrological landscape. Can you give us maybe some top line views of what we can anticipate for the next month?
Absolutely. I mean, especially this week into next week feels really powerful. We have two, what's called a planetary station. So like, and probably many people know, they've heard of Mercury retrograde, right? Like all the planets, except for the sun and the moon, go retrograde. And retrograde is not the planets going backwards. It appears to be going backwards from our perspective. So when a planet is set to either begin or end its retrograde phase, it's called a station. And the thought is, the experience is that what the archetypes that planet represent get very strong in our collective and in our experience. So, and again, this is like days before and days after. So this Saturday, in 2 days, I was like, where are we? We're on Thursday. On Saturday, we have the planet Saturn doing its bi-yearly station. So what I've been suggesting to a lot of people, we need to like uphold and really consider what Saturn inspires within us. And that is about building foundations. Like it's really important these coming days, like now and for the next handful of days, to really look at foundations, to look at framework, to look at structure and skeletons, to really see, is what I'm doing, is what I'm building, is what's occurring for me really in alignment with myself, or is it out of alignment? Am I in alignment or am I out of alignment? It's really important anytime Saturn is strong, like it is now, to go slow, to like remember that time is an essential ingredient in every recipe, to not cut corners, right? And also to see like where oftentimes we see during a Saturn station, like the consequences or the results of the actions we've taken, right? So if we've been efficient, productive, and aligned, we actually then may see the manifestation of that. If we have cut corners or we've just like been like, not going to look at that, not going to deal with that, we actually might see like those places that we like kept from view. So really important, go slow, don't cut corners, and really think about the inner integrity and structure of things. All the while, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I just said
All the
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, all the while, and this doesn't usually happen sort of back to back, on July 2nd, which is just weirdly that July, I can't believe it, is like literally
I know.
around the
It's great.
weekend corner. We have the planet Neptune stationing to go retrograde. Neptune is about the sea. Neptune is about the ocean. It's about water. It's about feelings. Neptune is like the planet that reminds us that everything is unified, right? And so when Neptune is very strong, we may find ourselves connecting to the mystical, the magical, our dreams, our sense of intuition, our sense of heightened perception, and with blurred boundaries, like a really deep sense of empathy or compassion. And so it's really an interesting, like 1 and 2 here. It's like be in alignment and like make sure your ducks are in a row, if you will, with Saturn, and also be sort of in wonder and be guided by awe, right? And also like to tune to something that's like, what we see, but also what is beyond that. How are we all connected to each other, right? So that, but at the same time, it feels important when there's strong Neptune, like we may feel really dreamy and really floaty, to just remember like, here I am in a body that's a red light. You know what I mean? Like, it's also
Right.
like follow the rules.
Right.
So we have that. And then on July 5th, we have this new moon that we were speaking of. So again, new moon, new beginnings, starting to think about what do you want to bring in? What do you want to anchor? And then the other thing that I would say just about the coming months, and if people want more details, they can tune in to like our July podcast that will be out in a few days, called So Divine, where we talk about the month. There's a lot of what's Plutonian energy in July, which basically means really important to dig deep, to not necessarily take things at surface value, to really plumb the surface and see what's underneath. What's underneath my feelings? What's underneath this motivation? What's underneath like what somebody's saying to me? How can I actually like find the hidden treasures that may seem on the surface to be buried, and really excavate them and exhume them. And in that, we are owning our wholeness and owning the depth of our power. So that feels like a very strong missive for July.
Wow. Wow. A lot,
A
right?
lot. It's a lot. It feels like a very big month. I think that in that too, like inviting in the hidden, because almost like the hidden wants to be seen. So, I mean, really mundane things to do for this would be like deep clean, right? Like clean a closet, like go through things and like see what has reached its expiration date, and take the things to Goodwill. Like doing that thing and sort of cleaning a house on the deepest of levels feels like such a beautiful mission and a really way to orient from a healing perspective this month.
Wow. Wow. That's so powerful. So I just have to ask you this because we hear so much about Mercury retrograde. Like, really, everyone talks about that all the time. And so, why is that like such a big focus? And is it always bad? Like, they always say, oh, Mercury retrograde, everything's going to be bad about it. But I don't think it's necessarily true, right?
No, I think that Mercury retrograde, that's one of the things over the last couple of years, I think, since astrology has become much more a common language, right? People really wanting to understand, like have an access to understanding life beyond like what we see, right? As we're questing to understand ourselves and the larger world. That Mercury retrograde just felt like something that was like, it happens 3 times a year, and it was just sort of like easy for people to like start to like connect to it. Um, and yet, unfortunately, and whether this is a whole other conversation, like why it like became like a fear factor thing, that's a whole other conversation. But to me, like one of the things that's really important to me, and this is why I'm so glad you asked, is to demystify that, right? Because people are like, okay, it's the 3 weeks of Mercury retrograde. I'm like, not going to talk to anyone. I'm not going to leave the house. I'm not going to like send an email. I'm going to do nothing. And
Right.
bad things will happen. Like, I just feel like in society, right? Like it's that we're so programmed to be like, oh, fear, oh, worry. Like, and
Right.
it's not that. Like, I actually love Mercury retrograde because Mercury retrograde gives you the opportunity, right? Again, like Mercury hasn't turned around during the retrograde, but it seems to be, if you look at it in the sky, retracing its steps. So as it retraces its steps, and it being Mercury being the planet of communication, the planet of bridging and connecting things, connecting people with people, information with people, people with goods. As it's retracing its steps, we can retrace our steps and go back to conversations we've recently had, go back to things that we have written, go back to ideas that have been germinating, and we have a different vantage point. So we can rewrite, reassess, rethink, reconsider. We have a different lens upon which we can literally see those things. And so to me, it's exceptionally productive. Not that everything has to be productive, and exceptionally creative because, I've looked at this thing from this vantage point, or I had this conversation with a friend, and this is what arose. Maybe there were some sticky things that happened with a friend or colleague or whoever. Now Mercury is retrograde. Let me take a different view on that. oh, maybe they said that because maybe I reacted that way because, again, we're able to see things differently. So then once we do that and we go back over, when Mercury then comes out of retrograde, we have those two views, right? Our initial understanding, a newfound understanding, and then we can find a synthesis so that we can then have a holistic understanding to move things forward. So I love Mercury retrograde, as a writer and someone who, not just written books, but, I write weekly for my free newsletter and other things. Like, I love it because I feel like, oh, what did I miss? Like, did I not say that well, enough? Did it, is there a different way that I can get the message across? So I would really encourage people to take Mercury retrograde periods, if you have the chance or the choice, if you have a big new thing and you've never launched it into the world and you want to share the message, Mercury retrograde is not maybe the best time for that initial messaging. Like, it's a great time to beta test. Like, okay, I'm just going to test that message and see, like, how do people respond to it, right? And so to collect that viewpoint, and then when it's out of retrograde, then you can share that message with the world. So that's my sort of simple or concise, or not that concise, 411 and my viewpoint on how to make the most of Mercury retrograde.
I love that. Do you have an example of how you used it in your life that you would be willing to share? Maybe an experience of a Mercury retrograde. I know I'm totally putting you on the spot. So
No, that's okay. No, I mean, there's definitely some examples that I can sort of quickly think of is like clients that I might have had a communication with and I haven't heard from them, right? Something, and I might go, I've gone back to them, and whether it's they're like, oh, I didn't get your email, or I didn't understand what you're saying, or just the timing wasn't right. And that doesn't always happen, but it's always worth that chance. So I do that. I have edited some things or old articles that I might have that maybe I didn't share. I will go back to them, look at them from a different vantage point, edit, restructure, reframe, so that then once Mercury goes direct, then I have sent them out, made them live on my website. So those are some things to consider, maybe for you too, again, how you communicate things, or sort of the platforms, or, also some other things that I've done during a Mercury retrograde is, oftentimes we get into habits of these are the information resources I use. Like, I go to that website for that and the website for that. I, use that, newsletter platform during Mercury retrograde. What else is there out there besides, now I use Squarespace, but the MailChimp. I think I actually made that choice to switch with one of my platforms from MailChimp to Squarespace emails, during that time.
oh,
Right. So again, you're just okay, instead of I'm going by rote
mm-hmm.
in the ways I communicate, in the platforms, in the resources and the tools I use to communicate, let me look to see what else might be out there.
Those are great examples. Love that. Love that. Yeah. So, again, for any of you that are watching that have not downloaded Stephanie's her four elements list, I'm going to put it again in the comments and on Instagram, and then it's on my website on the shopping page. So if you want to come on the page, you can download it as well. It's a valuable resource, and Stephanie is such a beautiful writer. She's a magician with words. So I highly encourage you guys to download it. It's a beautiful gift, and it just talks about the four elements and how you can use it in your life. So, is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about?
Yeah, and while much more is in that download, just to note too about the four elements, right? With astrology: fire, earth, air, and water. And the fire signs are, if you have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, and fire is like fire, right? It's inspired, it's creative. Earth, Earth is more grounded and sensual, and that's Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn. Air is more movable, more communicative. That's Gemini and Libra and Aquarius. And finally, water, flowing water, feeling water, sensitive water. And that is Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. But you can get much more about that in both in terms of, like if you have a lot of an element or you're working, as we talked about before, moving through different times of the year when the elements are strong, like both what to pay attention to in terms of the strengths of like what you can access, but also what to watch for, right? Because too much of anything is too much of anything, right? So we always want to watch for that as well, like those proclivities.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Is there any last thing you'd like to say or let our audience know about you, or anything you want to conclude with?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things, right? As you shared, like my website is stephaniegailing.com, and there you can, sign up for my free weekly newsletter, also about my services, my astrology guidance services, my family constellation services, which are a way of looking at family systems and sort of intergenerational trauma and working through that in terms of like of clearing and healing. So there's that, and my Instagram, which is Stephanie_Gailing. And for those people, I do all of my work on Zoom, except for wherever I am in person. And for any of your friends out there that are in Seattle, I've been away from Seattle for a couple of months, but I will be back in Seattle the end of July. And so I will be doing in-person sessions again in Seattle. So
Great.
if anybody's looking to get more information about a session, or I have a new series that I just created that interweave astrology and family constellations to help you make manifest an intention that's really important, a life change that's really important, some sort of creative project that you want to give life to. You can find more information on my website, and then just shoot me an email if you have any questions.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so excited you're coming back in July, so I can't wait to see you.
Me too. I know. I'm excited to get together with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. One, for coming on and sharing your knowledge with my audience, and two, for writing that beautiful download. So please, people, it's so gorgeous. You need to just go online and put in your email and download that 4 elements PDF, and you won't be sorry. You'll love what Stephanie wrote about the 4 elements. So anyways, thank you again. I appreciate you so much, and I'm so glad that we were able to go live today and for you to share all your wisdom about astrology.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation, and also for what you're creating.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Can't wait to see you. So let's meet up when you're back in Seattle.
Sounds perfect. I look forward to it. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.